Have you got your spouse with you? Like, are they sitting next to you, holding your phone or on the computer? If they're not, go grab them, because this is your marriage we're working on, people. You've got to have your marriage here all together in one place. 6-figure mastermind, let's get down to it. Hey, thanks for checking in today. I really feel the need to reach out to you right now and say, if you're looking up this video on how to make a marriage work, you probably experienced a marriage that's not working. And if that's the case, my heart really goes out to you, and kudos to you. I mean, I love that you have reached out and are looking for ways to make your marriage work. I am a marriage freedom fighter, meaning that I am a proponent of marriages working, and I'm so grateful that you have tuned in and wanted to make your marriage work for you. So let's get down to the nitty-gritty and see what it really takes to make a marriage work. If you're watching this with your spouse, awesome. Welcome to both of you. If you're not, I invite you to go get your spouse and watch this video with them. One thing I don't want you to do is watch this video and then go tell your spouse how they need to change. That is not how to make a marriage work. Making a marriage work takes two people not giving 50-50, because that only makes half. It takes two giving 100 and 100. In my book, Limitless, I share this really cool diagram of how to make your marriage work and how each of you need to bring 100% of you to the table in order to make that work. You know, in the Facebook communities that I run, the Facebook groups that I'm in charge of, the marriage support groups that I run, I get this first and foremost question, not just how to make marriage work, but when I asked, what is the number one struggle in your marriage? Do you know what I got as the number one? Communication. People want to know how to communicate better with each other. People want to know how to listen and to be understood. And let's be honest, that's mostly what people struggle with communication, is they don't feel heard and they don't feel understood. We're here to open and unlock that puzzle, make sense of that. So how do we communicate with each other? How do we communicate effectively with each other? Because bottom line, isn't communication the basis for everything? Communication is the basis for your intimacy life. Communication is the basis for your financial life. Communication is the basis for how to run your household together. Communication is the basis for understanding each other and really being on the same page. So how do we communicate effectively? Well, first and foremost, I want to share with you what I call the dotted line principle. I'm going to ask you to rewind, go back to kindergarten or first grade or whenever you were learning how to write for the first time, and go back to that piece of paper that was lined with the dotted lines on it and with the other line and with all of the letters that you had to learn to draw. Now, I've got a young child right now who's just learning how to draw for the first time, and he's bringing home all his homework, and the homework is his name written over and over and over, and he's got to trace the letters of his name and trace the dotted lines and write his name over and over and over again until one day all of the dotted lines are going to disappear and he's going to have to learn to write his name on his own. And then someday later he's going to college ruled paper and he's going to have to learn how to write his name even smaller on his own without the middle dotted line. So all of this dotted line stuff aside, what does that mean? What does the dotted line stuff mean for my marriage and communication? Well, think of it this way. If I'm trying to communicate something with my spouse, and you've heard this before, your spouse can't read your mind, even though we feel like sometimes they should be able to. They can't even read your actions. Let's get back to square one and go back to basics. If you're really wanting to improve your marriage, take a step with me back to the basics, even if it feels dumb at first, because that's totally okay. It's better than having a rotten marriage. Let's get back to the communication basics. If I'm doing something for my spouse, let's say that my spouse brings me a plate of dinner or has dinner waiting for me when I come home. And I'm the one saying, oh, I see that you're making me dinner. I can say out loud and say, I thank you for making me dinner. I see that as a sign of your love for me. If you're the one doing the service or the action, and maybe you did the laundry, it's okay for you to tell your spouse, hey, I'm doing the laundry as a show of my love for you. I'm doing this because I love you. I just want you to have the evidence of my love for you. And so I'm telling you that out loud that I'm doing the laundry as an expression of my love for you. Getting back to basics on that dotted line. And in order to do that, you're going to have to follow the second principle, which is called being in Switzerland. Now, what does it mean to be in Switzerland? Switzerland, we all know, is the country of neutrality. You know, I just visited Costa Rica this last week, and I learned that Costa Rica doesn't have an army. They don't have an official military in that country, which means not anyone is going to try to take over their country because there's no fight. There's no one to fight for. They've had amazing, almost counterintuitive peace in their country, and they've dived all of that money into education. So they are the number 2 most intelligent country in Latin America. Fascinating thing. But the point I want to make here is this. When you don't have an army, when you are being Switzerland, when you don't have something to fight back with and you're not taking a side or being triggered or having any venom, when you can have a place of Switzerland in your marriage, it is a really open playground for you to communicate one with another. And it's something that you really need to agree to on a very basic and elemental level. Ask your spouse, hey, I would love some time to sit down with you and just share some of my thoughts. Would you be okay holding some space for me while I did that? Is it okay with you if I get a little bit vulnerable and share some things that have been on my mind so that we can work some things out? And can you be in a space of Switzerland for me during that conversation? And if they say no, don't go there. If they say no and they know that they're not in a space where they can do that, say, okay, that's great. I honor and respect that choice of yours. I'll ask again later and maybe we can talk then. Asking permission is so fundamentally important. I could write entire books on how to improve your marriage, and I have actually, but here's one thing I really want you to know. If you can understand this single most important point, it's about honor and respect. Now, that seems a little cliche, but here's what I want you to understand. It needs to honor and respect you, and you need to honor and respect your spouse. Make the choice right now to show honor and respect. I do that through a series of different things. And maybe you've heard this, maybe you've been searching online quite a bit on this topic, and I'm sure you've heard other things. One thing that I love to do to show honor and respect to my spouse, before I even get to Switzerland, before I can do the dotted line principle, I need to do what I call a weed and feed. If I'm feeling upset towards my spouse, if there's something that they did just really got on my nerves, if there's really something that's not working, maybe there's like some nasty stuff that's going on in the marriage, I am not going to throw all that nastiness onto my spouse because it's not going to make anything better. What I actually love to do is to write it all down, to purge, to weed out all of the yucky nastiness that's been going on in my mind or in my heart. I'm going to literally take a sheet of paper and write it all down. Write all of the nasty words that are coming to your mind. Write all of the bitterness and the vileness. If there's a nasty word that comes to your mind, write it down. If there's nasty thoughts that come to your mind, write it down. You need to get it all out of you. And trust me, you're not going to keep that piece of paper. Take it out to the backyard barbecue and burn that thing. Get rid of the nastiness. Get rid of the intense, fiery emotions before you can come to Switzerland and have a conversation. When you can communicate effectively, it brings so much healing to marriage, but you can't do that if you're bringing in all this trigger of hatred energy or bitterness or betrayal. Get rid of that. Burn it, throw it away, make it completely gone off the existence of the planet before you have a conversation with your spouse. One thing that I love to do with my spouse is have a daily date night. And what we do during those daily date nights is a whole menagerie of different things. But one of the basic fundamental things I love to do in our daily date night is what I call the reflective conversation. The reflective conversation looks like this. I'm going to spend 15 minutes just talking to my spouse. And my spouse is not going to say anything. It's just their turn to listen. That 15 minutes, I get to fill the 15 minutes. It means if I'm running out of things to say at 5 minutes, the clock is still ticking. I get all the way up to 15. And I'm going to either stay silent or think of something else to talk about. I don't care what it is. There's no limits on what you can talk about in this conversation. But I'm going to talk for 15 minutes. As soon as I finish talking, my spouse gets to then share what they heard me say using the words that I used. Share things like, oh, I heard you say that you really like dark chocolate, but you only like it if it's 70% dark chocolate. I also heard you say that you've been feeling some frustration in our relationship, or that buying the car last week was really hard for you because you felt like you weren't listened to. Or I heard you say this. Make sure that you're using their words so that they hear that you understood them. And then it's time to switch. Now it's your turn to listen. If for 15 minutes, while your spouse just shares everything that's on their mind, filling out 15 minutes worth of space. And then you get to share with them what you heard. I heard you say that you really don't like oatmeal, even though we've been eating it for breakfast for 15 years. I heard you say that you had a great time with the kids last week at their dance class practice and that you'd like to do more of that. I heard you say, and then just fill in the space with all of the words that they use to share that you're listening, to share that you're actively listening. And it's going to take some active listening. You can't be distracted when you're doing this reflective conversation because you need to be taking notes even and writing down and remembering the words that they're saying and the feeling behind them so that your spouse knows and that you know that you have a beautiful place of connection with each other. One of the most important things that I found in my marriage is called the pattern interrupt. You know, if you're anything like me and you've had a marriage and you've had the arguments that you've had over and over and over again, I mean, pretty much you could script them. You can tell what your spouse is going to say and you know what you're going to say back, and you run these cycles and these patterns, and maybe the cycle is a 5-minute argument, or maybe the cycle is a week-long emotional roller coaster, and oh, it's Sunday again. I know my spouse is going to get upset because they get upset every Sunday before we head out the door. Maybe you know those cycles and you can pretty much anticipate them. Now it's time for a pattern interrupt. We had a really funny one in our marriage, and it's probably unique to our marriage. I don't know if anyone else would use it because it's, you know, a little bit weird, but it was really effective. Our pattern interrupt, I could feel ourselves running the cycle again. I was like, oh my gosh, here comes the same old argument about the same old thing. We're not seeing eye to eye. We need to stop the argument with a pattern interrupt. And I had this can of tuna fish in my hand, and I just threw it on the floor. And I was like, take that, floor tuna. And it was like so out of the blue and so bizarre that it totally it interrupted the pattern of the argument we were having. And my husband was like, wait a minute, what? And I was like, floor tuna. And he was like, what are you talking about? That has no... And I was just like, floor tuna. Totally stopped the argument in tracks. And by the time he wrapped his head around this floor tuna thing that I had created, it turned into this, what were we talking about? What were we arguing about? Like, it didn't even matter. And it completely cooled the conversation, completely interrupted the pattern, and we were able to come to a level-headed Switzerland conversation. So create a pattern interrupt. Create something that says, you know what? This argument isn't working right now. Bottom line is I love you and I'm committed to making this work out. So let's do a pattern interrupt. Pattern interrupt, I need 5 minutes to go cool down. Or pattern interrupt, let's go take some time out and just hold hands for 5 minutes without speaking. Something that will break the pattern for you. It could be as simple as and dumb as floor tuna, or it could be something as wonderful as, okay, everyone's going to stop talking. We're just going to hold hands for 5 minutes. But allow yourself to give permission for that pattern interrupt, that key phrase, or that, you know, every time from then on we had an argument, I would just say, or he would just say floor tuna, and we would know that we needed to stop the pattern, stop in our tracks, and just reevaluate where we're at. Are we going where we want to go with this? Use that pattern interrupt over and over again. Give yourself that permission. Understand what's important to your spouse, and understand that your marriage is of high importance to you, and it's probably of high importance to them too. If you're watching this video with your spouse, decide right now on a pattern interrupt that will allow you to step away from the arguments, step away from any cycle that's not working for you. And number one, create a bottom line that will allow you to come back to home base and say, you know what, I'm committed to making this work no matter what. Let's start from square one and let's do this thing together. Floor tuna, did it work? Have you got your own pattern interrupt? In fact, pick one below. I want to know what it is in the comments. Like, what is your phrase that breaks the patterns and just brings you back to home base and square one? What's your pattern interrupt in your marriage that you're going to use to get right back on track and to make the marriage work?